Oh, this music is appropriate right now.
Pretty
You
funny.
feel lucky, punk? Well, do you?
I gotta add when they told me Mr. Howell was coming by, I thought it's a good
Mr.
thing
Howell.
he finally got off the island. Uh, Charles Howell III.
True, or the golfer.
Mr. Howell is actually one of the commissioners in Jerome County, joining us. The gun guys here too as well. Todd Eccles and Forrest Anderson, and Bill Colley on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. But this has been a hot topic talked about for a very, very long time. I think, gosh, we did this show at the Jerome McDonald's almost 2 years
Yes.
ago, I think in April or May.
Right.
And we talked about this with you at the time. And so this is pretty exciting stuff. For those folks who don't know, it looks like we may have an area where people could, a public area where people could go and exercise their, not just their Second Amendment right, but, just have some fun maybe, but also train their muscle memory when it comes
Sure.
to firearms.
Sure.
Not necessarily a range per se. What are you going to call it?
Well, I think the designated area north of the freeway will be called a gun range.
Okay.
We're not allowed to, the technical term BLM doesn't allow gun ranges on their property. You have to
Sure.
patent the property and things like that. So, yeah, this is not a gun range on the south side of the interstate.
Well, I'm looking at the designation here, and you sort of outlined that.
Yes,
But
sir.
there's a shooting area south of there.
Yes.
So what can people do there? What's the difference between the north and south
Nothing.
ends of this?
At this point, nothing. Absolutely nothing. Nothing's changed. You have the right to discharge firearms over there,
Okay.
and there's nothing changing. And we want to make that perfectly clear. We are not directing people to one specific area. We're just saying you can shoot here, you can't shoot there. That's all we're asking.
You've had a lot of people sign off on this.
Yes.
I was going to say
Yes.
it wasn't easy.
Don Zuck, as I mentioned earlier in the conversation before we got on air, has been our gun guy. He's been in touch with the Second Amendment. We want to make sure that the signs are written appropriately, that the ordinance was written appropriately. They've had that checked, and I always paraphrase everything. Do I know this? I personally, because the only way you know it personally is if you've done it. But I trust Don Zuck, and he's carried this forward for the park committee, and he's cleared all those hurdles for us.
So
go ahead, Forrest.
everything east of the 700 East Road will be approved for shooting, and everything west of that will not be approved for shooting.
Correct, including the Idaho Department of Lands.
So what type of fine will someone incur if they're caught shooting west of that?
If I recall the ordinance, and I should have brought that this morning, and I apologize, it's $1,000 fine and up to 6 months, sentence.
That's good. I mean, there needs to be some sort of deterrent for people littering and shooting in
Absolutely.
the wrong area.
Well, and as it showed last night on TV, we already have a sign up there, no littering, with the county ordinance on there, and it's a state ordinance, but nobody's getting turned in, nobody's getting fined. I remember, I'm holding you guys' feet to the fire that you said you'd sponsor if somebody got caught fining it. Both former Commissioner Morley and I have both said we'd give $100 to pay that fine or pay that reward to get somebody for the littering stuff. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. I don't understand it.
Well, we almost need to, you hate to get user fees and things like that, but we almost
Exactly.
need to, if we do get like an official shooting area, we almost need some range fees to maintain that, to some user fees so we can have somebody police that, because as long as there's no policing, as long as there's no consequence, people are just going to do what they're going to do.
Absolutely right. I mean, I jotted some notes from you guys on the way over when I was listening to you. No, I wasn't texting and driving. I was writing and driving, so it's good. And it's rules aren't made for criminals. They're made for people like you and I. We're the ones that follow the rules, and so it's foolish. Why do you make the rules if you can't enforce them? We've already had the discussion with the sheriff. We had him in the office the other day with the county commissioners. He assured us that he would be out there on weekends and during the week to enforce this new ordinance that goes in effect. We're shooting for May 1st.
We've got a caller with us. Caller, you're on the air, and of course joining us in the studio, not only with the gun guys, but from Jerome County, a member of the county commission, Charlie Howell. Caller, you're up next. Go ahead.
Good morning. I might have missed something you guys might have covered already, but last night I was in a meeting and the question was brought up to a current commissioner, Ben Crouch, of has this ordinance already been passed, or is there going to be time for public input? And the news article made it sound like this was already passed and is going to be in effect May 1st. Going to be a public input hearing for this, and are you going to value the public's testimony, or are you just going to go through and do what your advisory board's saying?
Well, I think it's a two-pronged approach, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think the intent, frankly, from the board, the county commissioners, and the board of the park is to pass this ordinance. We are not required legally to hold a public hearing. However, we've encouraged people, and that's why we're out on the air. We're encouraging people to get your input. I still do believe it's going to get passed because I think that's how else are you going to do this park, and it's been a two-year in progress. But we still want your input. I mean, that's the whole part. It doesn't mean you're going to change my mind, because I think the intent of this is to have a park out there to do other things. But yes, we do want your public input. That's why we're trying to get it out there.
Did you have any recommendations contrary to what you've heard that are concerns for you?
I do, Forrest, and thanks for asking, because my recommendation would be to switch the shooting grounds to everything from east of 93 to 700 East Road. Let that be the shooting grounds, and let the people with the four-wheelers and the ATVs and the horses go out east of 700 East Road, because I've taken my four-wheeler, I've taken my horses down into Devil's Corral, down into some of those gullies, and quite frankly, if that's going to be the new designated shooting area, I don't want to be out riding my horse, my four-wheeler, when I got people shooting around me to try to get into those gullies. Because you can get down into the river from those gullies, and it's fun to go down there and play and ride around in.
That's true.
But if that's going to be the new shooting range, I don't want to take my kids out there and ride horses, and that's not really where I'm going to be allowed to ride anymore. But you're blocking off a lot of access to places where people can go enjoy, versus give the shooters the middle portion of that park and let them shoot. There's a lot of good backdrops there.
So I understand what you're
limited access.
I understand what you're saying there, and the aspect of Devil's Corral, et cetera, on that part. But we're not changing that use. You can still ride there today and ride your horses and ride your four-wheelers. We're not changing the use on the east side of 700 East Road. But I understand what you're saying, because I don't disagree with you either. That's a more pristine area. Yeah, it's better to look at on horseback. I mean, I ride horses myself, and I don't go there because of this reason.
My recommendation would be push all the shooting to the north side of the interstate. That would be mine. Just say, look, anything south, and it would make it super easy to enforce.
Absolutely.
Anything south of 84, you can't shoot out there.
Right.
North, yes.
And would you face north with the range?
Yeah, if you built the range, you would definitely want it to the north, because then you'd never be shooting with the sun in your eyes. So.
Right. You're speaking my kind of language, because I have said from day one I'm in favor of closing the whole park to shooting, and it's not. And I forgot to say right off the bat, this is not about Second Amendment. Trust me, it's not about Second Amendment. The Second Amendment gives you right to carry; it doesn't give you right to discharge.
Yeah, and you could still carry your firearm for
Absolutely.
self-defense over there, and you could still discharge it
Absolutely.
in a self-defense situation.
Absolutely.
But you couldn't set up targets
Exactly.
and target shoot over
Exactly. So I don't disagree with you. I've been a proponent, and I say that every time we get to the board. I'm in favor of closing the whole park to shooting, because it's supposed to be a park for multi-use, and right now it's being used for shooting and garbage dumping, and that's not what it was intended for.
And unfortunately, a lot of irresponsible shooters bring garbage out to shoot. Now, why you want to shoot garbage, I have no idea. But people bring garbage out to shoot, and then they leave it. So
Right.
if shooting is prohibited, it's really easy, A, to find them, because you hear gunshots, you go to the gun shop, you can issue the $1,000 fine to those people. And second of all, the line is very clear. It's
Exactly.
north of the interstate,
Yep.
south of the interstate.
No, and again, we're not changing that whatsoever. That use is still staying there. You can still ride four-wheelers on the north side of the interstate. You can shoot. You can ride horses. You can do anything you want. It's BLM land.
What's the input on when you talk to the rest of the commission about saying, look, let's just not do shooting here, because we do have a place to shoot north of the interstate?
So basically, this was a compromise with the board of the Parks Board, because we don't want to just walk in and say no shooting throughout the park. We feel like that's kind of a big sword to carry all at once and walk in and do that. But I don't, again, if the public out there, just like the guy says, will flop the areas, I'm willing to listen to that, and that's part's never brought up. I've got a couple of concerns, but I would not object to that. I think the board originally, the two new commissioners, let me put it that way, were for shutting the whole park off. I'm stumbling over my words, I apologize, but the compromise that the shooters and the Second Amendment wanted was, let's not do it all at once. Let's leave it here. Let's get the gun range installed over 93. And my opinion I've said this, my opinion for 10 years on this park. The people that drag garbage out there in the park area and shoot it are not going to be the ones that go to this gun range north of the park. They're just going to move that activity somewhere else.
We've got a caller with us. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX at 917.
Yes, there's a great big area when you say east of 700 and west of 700. And I'm going to say you're talking basically in my backyard. And every day almost there's gunfire. I mean, I can hear it from my house. And that area, we've got livestock out there. It's grazing. You have to be more definite as far as where your shooting area is, in my opinion. I'm not against shooting. I've got guns. I shoot all the time. But you need to be a little bit more precise about where you're saying, because you're just going to move the problem from the south side of the freeway to the north side of the freeway, and that's not addressing the situation the way it should be.
I think what the point of that would be
to make it more enforceable, because now you have a smaller designated area. So now it's easier for the officers to enforce, because anyone shooting in the non-designated shooting area immediately gets issued a citation, right? Where it is now, it's just kind of like,
right,
you got to go search for someone, and did they bring this garbage out or did they not? But if they designate that area specifically for shooting, then they can kind of keep people corralled there. They can make sure they're not bringing garbage out. They can make sure they're not leaving it.
Hold those thoughts, because we have to get to a break, but we've got more coming up. Charlie Howell joining us in studio. Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pond also here, as well as Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. Bill Colley, too, on News Radio 1310, KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. It's 9:20, and we're at 40. We're talking a little bit of additional firearms this morning, but this is because this is very, very close to home. And joining us in studio is Jerome County Commissioner Charlie Howell. We've got Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pond and Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. And what we're doing is we're discussing potential, it's Bill Colley with you too on KLIX this morning, but we could call it a confinement of the shooting area in the park just off 700 Road East. Or 700 East Road, rather, and we were having the discussion sometimes in the commercial breaks is a little bit more heated than what actually goes on over the air, but you were taking some notes down, too, when we were talking. At least you wanted to mention as well, Cleanup Day at the park.
Cleanup Day is May 18th, and that's sponsored by Jerome County. We contribute the money, but the ATV and the off-roaders come out and do that, and it's their manpower that put this project together, and that's kind of why we're shooting for May 1st for this ordinance. We do get loaders donated. BLM comes and helps us with their crews, but it's mainly the off-roaders and the ATVers that come in and do that project. It's a great thing, and that's part of the reason why May 1st is because it's a double approach to get that news out there that this is what's going in effect, and then clean it up, and then use that again as to put this ordinance back out there to go for it. And, I'll object to Bill there for a minute. I didn't think it was a heated conversation, because I've had some heated conversations. This was kind of why common sense says this? And I says, you're preaching to the choir, because I think I'm a pretty simple guy. It's a no-brainer to me if the commissioners would go for the whole park, but this is a compromise reached. I would have no objection to it. I've stated that for years.
I would put this out there. If someone has opposition to driving 1 mile further to be able to shoot, and just closing the park off completely to shooting. And now that doesn't mean you can't carry self-defense weapon.
Absolutely.
That doesn't mean you can't discharge your weapon
Absolutely.
in a self-defense situation.
Correct.
So they're not saying no guns. They're just saying no target shooting. Who would be opposed to traveling a mile further down that road to shoot north of the interstate? Because that would make it, A, very enforceable. No shooting south of the interstate.
Right.
B, I can take my horse, I can take my kids, I could even camp over there
That's
and not
true.
have to worry about getting shot.
That's exactly right.
Who would be opposed to that? I'd like to hear their voices and see something that I'm not seeing.
As a shooter, if we separated it that way, that would hopefully have all the off-road guys stay in the actual park side.
Exactly.
Because I don't even want to shoot over there. If I go and shoot, I don't want to shoot right there because I don't know who's going to walk over the hill, who's going to
Exactly.
drive over the hill, horse, whatever. And
Exactly.
so I haven't shot out there for years because of that.
Yetis is always a concern.
Yetis,
They
yeah.
wander around
Yeah.
and they don't listen to anybody.
The Bigfoot down there, yeah.
We've got a caller with
I thought
us.
you were talking about the cooler, sorry.
No.
Caller. The Mercury Sable. Caller, you're next. You're on the air. Go ahead.
Good morning, guys. You know, it's funny listening to this. It's just like it's like everything else in the world. Yes, we want this, but as long as it's not in my backyard. You know, we need to figure out something, and I think we need to find a canyon or something like Jerome County has on their gun range, where it's down in a pit, where it's going to be absolutely safe, but at least have 100 yards for them to target their rifles in to go hunting.
So I agree with that. I love Jerome's gun range because of that issue, and that would be part of the reason why the proposed gun range across on the north side of the interstate would be in there. If you go underneath the,
We lost a caller.
sorry about that.
Yeah.
If you drive underneath the over interstate on 700 East Road, when you come out to the north side of that, there's an old gravel pit there, and that's kind of what started that discussion. And that shooting range is proposed to be about 900 acres, so you can do some long range shooting in there. It would be developed in conjunction with the NRA and the other gun guys. As Forrest mentioned earlier off there, you'd have to have some enforcement out there, but yes, for a quote, quote, designated gun range, and that's what Don Zuck is going back to BLM. BLM does not allow gun ranges on their property, but we can request that property be given to Jerome County, patented and we have a lease on the park area. And if you look at the iFarm, that is a patent, as they say. We can't sell it or give it away. BLM has right of first refusal, as the realty guys would say it. But that's the reason for that designated gun range on the other side. You could still go out anywhere out there and still hunt. And one of the other issues that was brought to us Monday, that somebody came into our meeting, and we like public participation, is his concern over the hunting and archery hunting out there. And that's a really hot area to go archery hunting. And I have no objection to changing it to let archery hunters out there. I think it's great. You know, if you had horseback riding and archery hunting in the park, I have no objection to that. It just, to me, it's simple. It's no brainer.
Well, yeah, you're not talking about hunting. You're talking about target shooting.
Exactly.
That is the issue.
We got about a minute before the
point.
break. I'm going to squeeze a caller in, and then if you guys can stick around, we'll get back to this after Todd Starnes. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX.
Well, we got to be careful about using that property south of the interstate and east of 93, because that's where the regional airport will be. I'll hang up. Thank you.
Airport, interesting, because we talked about that just a few minutes ago off air. Yeah.
That's true. I think, we pushed for years to get that regional airport out there, and I don't think it's going to happen, because fortunately I brought in maps for the guys, and Idaho Department of Transportation, the National Guard, and the Department of Corrections all want to build a facility on the southwest corner of the interchange out there at Flying J, and that's within the next 5 years. And the National Guard has come in and told us that. The Transportation Committee is both in there. We haven't talked to the Department of Corrections, but that project is ongoing.
We'll take a short break. We've got more coming up. Charlie Howell joining us. He's a member of the Jerome County Commission. Todd Eccles in Studio 2 with us, as well as Forrest Anderson and Bill Colley on News Radio 1310. KLIX and NewsRadio1310.com. It's 42 at 9:30. We wanted to point out we're listening, or you're listening. I guess everybody's listening to News Radio 1310 KLI. We hope everybody's listening to News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Joining us in the studio from Jerome County, Commissioner Charlie Howell. Also, we've got Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense and Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn. And Bill Colley, too. Telephone number 208-736-0300. Subject is potentially, at least call it something, cleaning up that area north of the canyon and having a designated shooting area because right now we don't want to call it the Wild Wild West out there.
But it is.
It really is. Honestly, anyone that's been out there, it's honestly embarrassing because it's a trash dump. And people it's the Wild West. So here's the way I look at it. You can still it's an archery hunting zone. So you can still archery hunt there. No one's banning archery hunting as long as it's legal in the season, as long as it's legal.
You ever try to put an arrow through a refrigerator?
No one's banning you from carrying your concealed carry weapon for protection, right? You can still carry, you can still discharge that weapon in a self-defense situation. All they're saying is you can't drag your trash over there and you can't target shoot. You have to drive 1 mile further to access an area that will be legal to target shoot, and that'll do
safer.
And that'll do two things, in my opinion. It'll make the park so it's a clean area. You can go hiking, you could camp over there, you could ride your horses, you could ride your four-wheeler, you could drive your Jeep. With like in a Scout, I could tow a Jeep. That's generally what ends up happening anyway.
Scout. Don't you have a Scout?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. We're both Scout
That was
guys.
a dig. That was a dig at me.
Oh, no, that was a dig at Jeep owners.
Okay.
I said you can tow a Jeep with your
there you
Scout.
go.
Hold on to that thought for a moment. We'll get a caller in here. It's 9:36 and 43. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Yes. Has the gun range proposal done anything concerning, or it had any thoughts concerning fire suppression? Because, wildfire suppression, I'll be on the east side of that range, private property. I've got 200 acres of desert pasture, been burned out before. I'll probably be burned out again. But you get more idiots out. I'm using the phrase seriously.
Well, okay, but hold on for a moment because I understand as the host of the show, you might want to continually get this in, but let's be honest. There are already people shooting out there, so the threat of a fire is there already, right?
And isn't it already? It should be already illegal to fire at explosive targets on BLM land anyway.
Yes,
correct?
it is.
It
you
is.
can't shoot.
I don't
You
know
can't
that
shoot tannerite.
Yeah.
You can't shoot tracers.
We may not be able to shoot anywhere outside of our own private property with a new law that was proposed. So when it comes to exploding targets,
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that. I can get binoculars and see if I hit the target or not. I don't need it to blow up.
Right. I just know I hit it. I don't even have to look.
Ooh, good one. I'm not going shooting with you guys.
So what I'm saying is, I just think it could be if we push the shooting north of the interstate, and then we made a kind of a designate, it'll be easier to enforce. So now the police can say, look, if I hear any shooting on the south side,
Right.
I can issue a citation.
Yeah.
Right, which will keep people from dragging their trash out there and shooting it. It'll just make it much more enforceable. And if you could get a commitment from the Jerome County Sheriff says, look, if you'll do your part, we'll do our part.
Yeah.
Then that takes care of that. Now we can focus our efforts on littering and dragging trash out solely to the north side of the interstate, and it's going to make it a lot easier to enforce.
No, I agree with that.
So we're going to have a cleaner park. No one's going to have to worry about getting shot. If fire suppression is your concern, it'll be the BLM Forest Service will be able to focus their firefighting efforts
On one area.
And
And you got with the interstate there, you got a definite hard line border there.
yep,
I mean,
you got a fire line.
Yeah.
So I know the BLM is responsible for firekeeping out there, but being a member of the Jerome Rural Fire Department, we're first responders. We get out there first. And so it's a joint mutual aid situation with BLM and Jerome Rural Fire. We're out there all the time, and I don't disagree. It's going to get burned off again because cheatgrass just keeps burning.
yeah, we've got a short break. We've got more coming up. Charlie Howell joining us from the Jerome County Commission this morning, along with Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn, Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense, Bill Colley, too, handling the telephones. We've got, I'll call it 940, almost 940. It's 43 on KLIX. We're talking about potential, call it a place to go shoot. Because range is probably correct, but again, we mentioned this at the top of the hour that calling it a range might not necessarily fit into BLM rules.
Correct.
And Charlie Howell joining us this morning from the Jerome County Commission. And again, in studio with us, Forrest Anderson from Washington Street Pawn and Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. Bill Colley with you, too. It's 9:43 and 45 on News Radio 1310. KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And I think some of the callers, just to clear this up, because I think it's been a little confusing, because they can't look at the maps like we can. You're talking about an area. It's not really a box. It's sort of like it's a notched box, we'll call it, and it's north of the highway, north of Route 84. So you wouldn't be impacting people who were, and you'd be shooting in that direction, sort of, probably north by northeast.
Correct.
And so you wouldn't be impacting anybody who was riding horseback or on ATVs.
Right, on the south side.
Right. So that completely, and you're away from homes too.
Exactly.
And so what you're doing is you're confining all of this to that area. So you don't have people, because right now, I mean, heck, we had a doctor who took a bullet in the chest a couple of years ago, and so this eliminates all of those threats from people who live near there and from people who are out on horseback and so we've got to make all that clear.
Well, let's just, I mean, you want to get this done and you want to do it right, because you don't want to have a bad accident. You have a bad accident, then it's going to be shut down for everybody. I guarantee it.
That's true.
So I would like to hear someone who would be opposed to moving the shooting area to north of the freeway. I want to hear their reasoning for why they feel like they need to shoot south of the interstate in this area where everybody's hiking and bike riding and off-roading and riding horses. Like, I want to hear someone's argument, because maybe I'm missing something. But to me, it's pretty black and white.
Yeah, I drive a vehicle that gets like 5 miles to the gallon, and I'm willing to drive an extra mile.
I got to give you $5?
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm looking at the map, and for people who might be, that try to visualize this, people who actually have been there and know the area. There's not even the closest housing development would be off more to the northwest, so nobody's even going to be shooting in that particular direction. So
it would be more than a mile to the nearest home from there.
Yeah.
So, but if somebody has a reason, like, I'd love to hear it. I understand that there's a couple people on the commission that kind of put this together who are opposed to closing off the whole area, because their concern is, well, the shooters aren't going to like that. I hang out with a lot of shooters. I don't know anyone that would be opposed to that.
To be honest with you, the way they want to do it now, that just seems messy to me.
I don't disagree.
And if you're a responsible shooter, why would you say, yeah, I want to go shoot in a place where possibly someone on a horse or a hiker or a mountain biker is going to come riding over the hill behind where I'm shooting? Like, I just wouldn't shoot there because it doesn't make any sense, right? I want to be safe. So let's get some input.
We've got a caller. You're up next. You're on the air on KLIX at 946.
Morning. Opposed. North side of the freeway, it is archery deer hunting, and we're losing enough habitat to archery hunting because of the way the laws are going nowadays. So, I mean, the area is to the south of the freeway. It's just a giant dump, and it needs cleaned up, and I think you could keep it over there.
Well, the thing is, you can shoot north of the freeway now. Exactly. So it's not like people aren't shooting over there, and no one's saying you can't archery hunt over there. I mean, you can still archery hunt south of the freeway.
Yeah, I'd probably head over that way to shoot just to get away from the junk.
Yeah, they're shooting on the the west side of 93 already, because to get away from the larger shooters over there. That's the problem.
Yeah, so people are moving over there to shoot, to get away from the garbage dumps, to get away from everything else. So no one's saying you can't archery hunt there, and I understand your concern that, well, if people are shooting rifles out there, then it's going to run the deer off. But, I mean, people are shooting over there anyway. So no one's saying you can't archery hunt. No one's saying you can't archery hunt south of the freeway. They're just saying they don't want that to be a target area. And you have to understand, I doubt anyone in this proposed 900 acre complex. It's an old gravel pit.
Right.
I don't think anyone's archery hunting in that old gravel pit.
We've got a caller. Caller, you're next. You're on the air on KLIX. Good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. Real quick, gentlemen. It's been years since I have shot over there on the area you're talking about. That would be the south side of I-84. When I used to live in Twin Falls, I now live south of Twin Falls. But at that time, I was doing some shotgun shooting with a trap, and it was a city dump. And I'm unfamiliar with this area north of the highway, but you more or less answered my question. With 900 acres, there ought to be room for some shotgun sports also.
Yeah, there's plenty of room
correctly?
for that, and it's not like it's going to be filled with shooters. I think that if eventually they got the permit from the BLM, they granted them that land, you could designate shotgun shooting area, handgun shooting area, rifle shooting area.
Right. It would be more quote unquote organized. And I appreciate we had a gentleman come into the commissioners meeting on Monday. I think I already said that. And his concern was the archery hunting out there. The current ordinance for the park does say no archery shooting, but I would have no objection because I've archery hunted in the years past. I haven't done it for quite a while, but I don't see that danger and a concern. I go back to Forrest's terminology of target shooting. There has been a proposal to hold an archery silhouette shoot out there. I think that's great. That's part of what the park could be used for. And so but I understand your concern if you put a park or a gun range right in the middle of the archery hunting area, that might be a concern. So that would come back to the proposal of that's not a set in stone thing. That's just what we're shooting for, and we would appreciate everybody's input into that planning method too, because it's going to take us a couple of years to get this done.
Want to thank the caller for chiming in too as well, and a couple of things, because again, the Wild West reference is not that far off, as you're telling me. I can remember on Todd's advice, I decided to drive down to Jarbidge about a year ago, and one thing I noticed with the signs along the road, everyone is stopping and using those as targets.
Exactly.
I mean, they're riddled with dents and holes. But this is the whole goal here is to confine this and prevent that sort of thing from happening, and because it does go on, and will there be people who probably still violate it? Well, you get a better opportunity to.
It's enforceable now.
Right
now, the area is huge. You can't enforce it.
Right.
But if you designated that, it's easy to enforce. And like I said, I just want to hear people's concern. And if it's an archer's concern, to say, hey, well, we archery hunt over there. People can shoot over there now anyway. So it's not going to bring something to that area that's not already there. And it's also going to be in a focused kind of area. There's a gravel pit over there. I don't think people are hunting in archery and in that gravel pit. So, to me, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
A couple of callers, who reference living in the area, but obviously, the number of homes out there is a few is probably a good way to describe it, right?
Right.
And again, this is going to be. Now they may hear some of the report that when people are actually shooting, but beyond that, it's probably going to be muffled compared to what they already hear. The caller even referenced that. He hears the shots all the time now.
Yeah, I have a couple of friends that live down in the country club estates down there, and I won't make them famous by mentioning them on the radio, but they complain about the shooting all the time. It is a concern. They have bullets in their front yard when they find it, so yeah, they don't like it. And there is a lot more private property out there than what you think, and that's why the purpose of the map and the signage, and hopefully the board decided that they were going to spend the money yesterday to put up a kiosk, as they call it, right on the entry of the park, so you can see whose property is whose. The BLM, the IDL, Department of Lands, private property. So yeah.
My recommendation would be the Jerome County Commissioners just move shooting to the north side of the freeway and be done with it in one swoop. None of this. You can shoot here. You can't shoot here. I mean, that's what I would say. And just be done. Let's just get it done and then move forward. Because once that's out of our hair, then we can come up with a designated range, and then that'll satisfy everybody. The shooters will have a place to shoot. The archery guys won't have to worry because the shooters are shooting in a designated area. The motorcyclists, horseback riders, mountain bike riders, and hikers will have peace of mind in it. They can hike over there south side freely and not have to worry about getting shot with a stray bullet. It takes care of everything.
Got a caller with us, and caller, you're up next. You're on the air at 9:52 on KLIX.
Yes, question about archery hunters. The statement made by Charlie Howe was that the proposal disallows archery hunters at this time. So we're kind of getting a double standard, I think.
I'm sorry, I don't understand that.
Caller, are you still with us?
You say you say that it's okay to archery hunt, and then it's in the proposal it says that it's not able to archery hunt. So please make that clear to me, would you?
Sure. I apologize for that confusion. So the current ordinance as written does prohibit archery hunting in the park on that edge. I hope my statement was that I would have no objection with public comment like yours and the gentleman that came in Monday to allowing archery hunting on there. I don't see that as a concern and a safety risk. So the current ordinance as written does say no archery hunting, but I would have no objections to allow archery hunting throughout the park. I don't see that as a concern.
Caller, does that help answer your question?
It helps a little bit. It's the power of the commissioner to christen that and say that is in stone or not.
Everything, we live in a democracy, so
Right.
it would be subject to a vote. But right now,
You can't lose anything that you don't already have, right?
Yeah,
You can.
correct.
According to now, you can't archery hunt in the park. But I think a good addition to moving the shooting north would be then to say, and we're going to allow archery hunting south.
Right. If you want me to say on air that I would support that and carry it forward, and I give you my word that I would support that issue, I'll say that. I'll support that issue to get the ordinance changed to allow archery hunting in there.
Coming up at 9:55, and we're down to just a few minutes to go. So what happens next? I mean, you've gotten some public input and people are popping in and out of meetings. What happens next?
Well, I think we go back and have another discussion, and I think we're going to have with the great input we've had today, go back and talk to the park board and say, look, this is what we're getting. And that's again, to the first person who's asked, are we having a public hearing? And the answer is no, but we're going to have discussions on it. It's posted on our website. We're by law, and I like people to know to come in and visit and give us input. My email's out there, my cell phone's out there. You're welcome to call me on my cell phone, 308-1768. All I ask is everybody else asks here is be courteous. I'll listen to you and let you have your input. I may not do what you asked me to do, but that's part of the way the world works too. But I do like the input. So the next process, I apologize for getting sidebarred there, is we'll have a couple more discussions. We may call in the board before that because we have to enforce it. Once we post it in the papers, we have to have everything done within 30 days. So that's our time frame. We still have 2 months to get it done. We're not in a crunch time. So any other input, you want to send us emails. All three of the county commissioners are public out there. Call us on the phone. I know they're all out there listening. So yeah, give us your input. If you've got some corrections and bumps, like I say with the archery thing, yeah, let's hear it. Let's hear it if you want the whole thing changed to no shooting. Let's hear it if you want to come in and support the cleanup on May 18th that I'm going to mention again, or if you want to come in and help Don Zuck with the shooting range across the interstate. We need the help. We need the input.
By the way, I got to ask you a quick question because on the map,
sure,
right here, dead smack in the middle of all this BLM land is a rectangle of private property.
Yeah, I don't know what that is.
Isn't that amazing that
yes,
somebody managed to keep their private property and the government didn't get its hands on it? So,
yeah. And if you look at the map right on the road, there's a private little brown spot right in the middle of the road where the 700 East Road starts. That is a Breckenridge subdivision in there. And so you don't think, there is private property out there.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of it. And by the way, again, so much of it right near where people are currently shooting that's the big concern, and that's what's on everybody's mind. We got about 30 seconds to go. If people want to have that input online, is there a place that they would go to check that out?
Sure. All of us have the same email. Basically, it's our first initial on our first name, so it would be C Howell, HOWELL, @co.jerome.id.us. And that would be the same for all three of us. So it would be J. Crozier or B. Crouch with the co.jerome.id.us. id.us. Love to hear from you.
Commissioner Crozier actually has to see Forrest at Thanksgiving dinner. Can you imagine that?
Really? I did not know that.
He'll fill you in. Hey, we've got to wrap it up today. I also want to thank Todd Eccles and Forrest for sticking it out this hour too as well on this topic. We're at 44. Rush Limbaugh is up next. Bill Colley saying, "God willing, if the creek don't rise." I'll be back here Monday morning between 6 and 10 a.m.